Hello and welcome back to This Day in History. It is July 5th, 2024, and it is a beautiful, bright, sunny day, and it's very, very hot. So hot, in fact, I pulled off the side of the road where I found a nice shady spot, and I have this window closed because that's where the traffic is, and tried to cut down the traffic noise so you can hear me. But this is This Day in History. We have some interesting birthdays. We have some interesting things that happened today. More declarations of independence. This one I find interesting because it was completely bloodless, and some sports related stuff. Garment related stuff, and yeah, so let's just get into it. So the first birthday is the year is 1810, and P.T. Barnum is born, and you may have heard the name. He was an American showman. He partnered with this guy named James A. Bailey. If you're figuring out who I'm talking about, that would be Barnum and Bailey. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum, Barnum and Bailey got together and they set up a circus, and then they either they were bought out or they merged with the Ringling Brothers. So for years you had the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus that would make its circuit around the United States. They'd bring, circus animals and the like. Well, we did an episode some time ago where basically that circus had discontinued for a short time, and then when it came back without the use of animals, because, well, the environmentalists, the animal rights activists had, cried foul and, like, how dare you. But next to zoos, the circus was the best way for people to be introduced to wildlife that's not from our own nation. So I think it's unfortunate that people feel that, their ideologies need to be imposed upon others needlessly. I guess. I don't know. Moving right along, the year is 1853. Cecil Rhodes was born, and he was the Prime Minister of Cape Colony in South Africa. 1859, we have Jean Cocteau. He was a French poet and artist. And there's a lot of artists' birthdays, and, or rather I should say people of the arts. A lot of people, quite a few of them had birthdays today, like 1859, Jean Cocteau. 1940, Chuck Close, he was an American artist. 1963, Edie Falco, her birthday is today. She was an American actress. And that concludes the birthdays for today, July 5th. It is July 5th, 1859. It is, almost 5 months after Oregon becomes a state, that a Captain N.L. Brooks, he discovers the Midway Islands in the Central Pacific, and he claimed the territory for the United States. What's important about the Midway Islands is that it would be a crucial point in the war, in World War II. The Japanese and the American fleet, naval fleets, they clashed at the Midway Islands, and not only was Midway important because it was the midway point of the war, but it was the Midway Islands were strategically the midway point from American territory to Japanese territory. So it was. I didn't realize that those islands. It was a relatively recent discovery. 1859 wasn't that long ago, not really. So we fast forward to 1865. Now, I knew that, the Secret Service began operation in 1865, but I was under the impression that it was President Lincoln who had had ordered it into creation. And it's possible he may have, but it's on this day that the U.S. Secret Service began operation under the Treasury Department. Now, it might have been that when President Lincoln approved the creation of the Secret Service, it probably was not under the branch of anybody. Its sole focus was, however, it wasn't about protecting the president, although it had been suggested that he utilized them for his protection, but then he didn't. But their main focus was always the prevention of counterfeiting. It really had nothing to do with presidential / dignitary protection, personal protection. That's what they're used for. Those agents who aren't being utilized for protection detail, the rest of the department is its sole purpose is the law enforcement arm, as it were, of the U.S. Treasury. So like the IRS is its auditors, but the Secret Service is its muscle, right? So, and especially in the arena of counterfeiting, right? So if you're counterfeiting our currency, then it's the Secret Service is going to come knocking on your door, along with the FBI and anyone else they decide to bring along with them. Maybe a Homeland Security agent will probably be involved in that. Who knows? At any rate, that was 1865. We fast forward to, it's 1946, right? It's a year after World War II has ended. The very first bikini, as designed by French engineer Louis Réard, it debuted in Paris. It was named the bikini, the two-piece swimsuit was named Bikini after the name of an island in the Marshall Islands chain that was utilized for a peacetime atomic weapons testing session, right? So apparently, this bikini makes its debut on July 5th. Well, on July 3rd, they had just tested an atomic weapon on Bikini Island. So I don't know if it was, they were trying to draw awareness to the proliferation of nuclear weapons, or if it was, hey, this garment is so hot that it could be nuclear. I don't know. But I found, I never knew when the bikini was actually invented or when it debuted. I knew that it was, it was 50s, or if it was pre-50s, it wasn't, I just didn't know when. But apparently it was 1946, and the Bikini is actually the name of an island in the Marshall Island chain where they did a nuke test. 1954, Elvis Presley records That's All Right. It was his first hit, and not only was it his first hit, but it helped cement the genre of rock and roll. It helped cement him as the king of rock and roll. It cemented him as as a bona fide musician, and it it put a new genre of music on the scene, which up to that point you had the big band stuff from, up to the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. And then you had stuff like Sinatra and all them who, I don't know what, other than big band, I don't know what you would classify that as. And, of course, then you had the jazz and rhythm and blues had always kind of been around. And then you had the old school country and western. And then rock and roll kind of morphed from all of that. But they all get their roots from rhythm and blues. So, yeah. So, I talked about an independence, right? So, it's 1962. 1962, Algeria officially gained independence from France. The thing is that they had declared their independence from France 2 days earlier. And so, again, that would have been July 3rd. Algeria declares its independence from France. So 2 days later on July 5th, France says, okay, you were hereby independent. So, pretty cool. Oh yeah, 1971. This was a landmark event for like my mom's generation. My mom said she remembered this because it directly impacted her. So my mom was born in 1952, which means she turned 18 in 1970. She couldn't vote in 1970 because she was under the age of 21. So the 26th Amendment is certified on this day in 1971. And what the 26th Amendment did is that it gave the suffrage voting rights to 18 years and older. So, come election day, November 1971, my mom was legal to vote as a, it would have been her first time being a voting adult. So that was pretty huge for her. My aunt would have been 18. Yeah. Well, no. My aunt wouldn't have turned 18 until like after the voting cycle in 1971, so missed it by that much. But 26th Amendment of the Constitution was certified, and the 26th Amendment essentially gave 18-year-olds and older the right to vote. Fast forward to 1975. I am not quite 3 months old. Well, May, June. Yeah, I'm 2.5 months old. Wimbledon happens, and if you know anything about tennis, Wimbledon is like it's almost like the Super Bowl of tennis, right? So Arthur Ashe defeats Jimmy Connors at the 89th Wimbledon, I forget what they call it, championship. Yeah, the Wimbledon championship. I mean, Wimbledon is a huge deal. If you get to go to Wimbledon, like, that means you are, you're a somebody in the tennis world. So we fast forward to 1989. I didn't realize that it was on this day in 1989 that Seinfeld had first aired. I thought it was it had aired in the 90s, but it was 1989. The very first episode of Seinfeld aired. And if you liked Seinfeld, well, It was a sitcom. It was supposed to be funny. I'm not a big Jerry Seinfeld fan. So like, I don't dislike him, but I don't think he's incredibly funny. He's kind of like, for me, he's kind of right up there with like Ben Stiller. And I don't think Ben Stiller is the funniest guy on the planet. I don't hate him. I mean, I don't go see his, Stiller's movies to see him. I go to see whoever else is in the movies. Every Ben Stiller movie that I ever went to go see, it was because of who else was in it. Usually Owen Wilson, because I liked him. But and Stiller's not a bad actor. It's just I just don't particularly care for his comedy. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, moving right along. 1996. It's on this day in 1996 that Dolly the sheep is born. What was interesting about Dolly is that she was the first cloned mammal. And so the first successfully cloned mammal. She was born. However, they waited until a year later in 1997 to announce the fact that she was a cloned animal that was born. So, because a lot of people were up in arms with scientists essentially playing God there. So it was kind of a little controversial. In 2002, Ted Williams, he was an American baseball player. He died at the age of 83. He died in Inverness, Florida. Back to tennis again. Back to Wimbledon. It's 2009. Swiss tennis player Roger Federer defeats Andy Roddick at Wimbledon. And the interesting thing is that it was a record-setting 15th Grand Slam singles title. So, Roger won his 15th title, and that's pretty impressive. I used to watch tennis because back in the day, Jennifer Capriati was an up-and-comer in tennis, and she was roughly around my age. She was a year older than me. But I thought she was hotter than hell. And there was another girl that, went to my school that I was, oh, man, I obsessed over her. She played tennis, so I got interested in watching tennis because of my crush and because I had this obsession with Jennifer Capriati. So, and if this video ever gets back to Jennifer Capriati, I apologize for sounding like a creeper, but you were a phenomenal player. I mean, I watched you play and you were just so damned good. And I really enjoyed watching Jennifer play. Yeah, she was amazing. She's something else. And of course, that's what got me into watching, Wimbledon. And I don't watch it much anymore now. I couldn't tell you who's who in tennis, but there was a time there when I followed tennis a little bit, and it was I enjoyed watching it. I myself couldn't play for crap. I mean, I sucked at it. I liked volleyball, but in high school they didn't have men's volleyball. It was women's volleyball, and I'm not the kind of person to go say, well, if this girl over in this other city can, get into wrestling and it was an all-male sport, I could do the same thing here. I mean, that was never my thing. But I always appreciated the players that played tennis. I always loved McEnroe. Like, the guys, he was a jerk, but he was always so entertaining because when he would just lose his shit, it would just be funnier than hell to watch. I mean, I rather enjoyed watching him just lose his cool and get mad, throw his racket, and it was a pastime. It was, oh man, it was hilarious. Andre Agassi was a great player. I mean, I loved watching him play. And of course, the sisters, Serena and Venus Williams, they were they were amazing players. But I never really watched Arthur Ashe in his prime because I was, too young for that. But my understanding is Arthur Ashe was a great player. Billie Jean King was a great player. She actually beat him in the Battle of the Sexes, as I recall. Jimmy Connors was a household name in tennis. And I knew that he was a household name, but I'd never actually seen him play. When I started watching, like McEnroe was established, and that was, Agassi came in and he got himself established, and then, all the others that I had mentioned were, yeah. So, yeah. So the featured event for today, because we're getting on and I ramble too much. So the year is 1950. So it's July 5th, 1950. Israel's law of return passes. And what's important by that is that it was passed by and I apologize to my Hebrew brothers and sisters, to my Jewish friends, or any Israeli who might be watching this. Is it Knesset? 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 I think I'm saying that right. It's Hebrew for assembly. Basically, it's their parliament. This law in 1950 passed, and the law, what the law did is that it granted Jews the freedom to immigrate. So, like European Jews, I imagine American Jews, South American Jews, Asian Jews, anybody who was Jewish that wanted to come home, which Israel was the homeland. Anyone who wanted to come home, what this law did is that it gave them the freedom to immigrate back into Israel, as well as receive immediate Israeli citizenship because they're Jewish. This law, was great for, displaced Jews wanting to go back to their homeland. However, it wasn't without its controversy. It did prove controversial when the question of who is a Jew, it sparked up debate, and it raised other issues. So it really, I think what it was that it came down to, it's like, well, how do we determine who is a Jew and who is not a Jew? Do we take them at their word, or do we make them jump through rigmarole to prove their Jewish heritage? Because the thing is, so the interesting thing about the Jewish culture is not only is it a race, but it's also a religion. It's, this is the only culture that I can think of where the religion is imbued in their national identity. I mean, because not every American is a Christian. Even though a lot of people like to say that America is a Christian nation, well, they don't act very Christian a lot of the time. Christianity isn't imbued in our identity the way that Judaism is imbued in the national identity of an Israeli. So, I mean, you have Muslim countries and, but the thing is, their national identity is their individual identity. I'm Jordanian, or I'm Syrian, or I'm, insert Muslim nation here. They are, I am this race who happens to be a Muslim. Whereas, the Jewish people is, when they say they're Jew, that means their race is Jew, and their religion is Jew. I mean, not every Jewish person Israeli is a practicing Jew, obviously. I'm sure there's some atheist Jews out there too, but it's, it's very fascinating. And this isn't a knock on the Jewish people at all, because I actually love the Jewish people. I love the Jewish culture. I have a lot of admiration and respect for, anyone who can be outnumbered to the factor of 12 to 1, where the enemy was 12 times bigger, and you still came out on top. You've instantly got my respect, right? You were definitely the underdog, but that's the thing, is that you can clearly see, I can clearly see, the hand of God was at work there in those times where the Muslim nations rallied up together, formed a coalition to try to stamp you out early on in your, in your current iteration, your nation's history. I have nothing but love for the Jewish people. They, in their history, they've gone through a lot. And that's not to say that, other cultures haven't. But, I mean, they were systematically hunted down and exterminated, and to the point of extinction. And, had the axis of evil not been, dealt with, it very well could have happened. And hope we never see that again. But that is this day in history. This has been July 5th, and I am going to go home, sit in the AC, and enjoy the rest of my day. Probably go play some video games or something. I don't know. Upload a lot of videos that I haven't uploaded yet. Sorry. But do enjoy your day. Be careful. Be blessed. And we will do it again tomorrow for July 6th. So take care of yourself and each other. And be blessed. And just stay safe out there. All right? Take care. Bye.